Topping from the bottom, a term that oftentimes incites disgust, rolled eyes, and scoffing in the BDSM world. But today we're going to discuss why it's not the villain it's painted to be, but also how, as a true submissive, you can avoid this kinky faux pas if you are aiming to please a femdom. Hello, my pets, and welcome back into the dungeon, the podcast for submissives and femdoms to learn, grow, find entertainment, and ultimately empowerment in the lifestyle. I'm your host, KatNash, the Music City Dominatrix, and today we're getting into a topic that causes a lot of confusion. The difference between bottoming and being a submissive, and why understanding that difference is crucial to building healthy, hot, and consensual dynamics. Whether you're new to kink or deep into your lifestyle, you may have heard the phrase topping from the bottom. It's often used as a critique, but it's not always explained clearly. So today we're going to really get into it. We'll talk about what bottoming is and how it's different from submission, why neither one is necessarily better than the other, what topping from the bottom actually means, real examples of it in action, and how to avoid it if your true desire is to submit. So, assume the position and let's get into it. Let's start with some definitions. What is bottoming and topping? In kink scenes, the term bottom refers to the person receiving a sensation. So whether that's impact, restraint, stimulation, or any other type of play, bottoming is physical. It's about the body and the experience in the moment, and it can be entirely separate from any kind of power exchange. For example, someone might bottom for a spanking, but still maintain control of how hard, long, or when it ends. Someone may be restrained or flogged for the physical thrill without wanting to serve or obey the top, even just in a scene. They just love being spanked, for example. In sex, one person can be somewhat inert while the other is the one doing the pounding or doing the bouncing, and the person that is inert is the bottom. On the other side of the coin, we have topping. A top is the person delivering the action in a scene. So this is the one swinging the flogger, tying the rope, pouring the wax, or giving the spanking. But here's where people sometimes get confused. Topping does not automatically mean being the dominant. You can top a rope scene with a friend where you're equals, no power exchange at all. You can be a switch and top a friend in an impact scene. You are not their dominant. You're topping them in that scene. Or, likewise, dominants don't always top. Some may direct the play and control the dynamic while someone else physically carries it out. Also, technically, chastity play, anything that is verbal or mental as opposed to physical, is not topping. In short, topping is about doing. Bottoming is about receiving. Neither one automatically involves a power exchange or a dominant-submissive relationship. That layer only comes into play when power exchange is explicitly negotiated. Now that we've defined topping and bottoming, let's go ahead and define submission and dominance. Submission is about power, specifically the willing surrender of power to another person. So when you are a submissive, you're not just receiving sensation. You are relinquishing authority. You're offering your mind, your obedience, your service, and your attention. Submission can happen with or without pain or physical play. A submissive might kneel, follow rules, address their dominant with honorifics, or hand over decision-making in everyday life. They might never take a flogger or step into a dungeon and still be in deep submission. It may not involve any sort of toys or tools at all, no chastity cages or collars. These can be symbols and tools for submission, but submission itself is a headspace and an offering. Submission is psychological, emotional, relational. So, what is dominance? Dominance is about power, specifically the willing acceptance of power and responsibility from another person. When you are a dominant, you're not just delivering sensations or giving orders. You are accepting authority over another person's experience, their actions, or behavior with their consent. Dominance is about leading. It's about creating the container in which the submissive can safely surrender. Dominance can happen with or without physical play. A dominant might direct a scene, assign tasks, or set rules and rituals for their submissive to follow. A dominant might dictate a submissive's life or how the relationship dynamic is going to evolve or what it's going to be like, the structure of it. They may never pick up a flogger or give spankings themselves and still be fully in their dominant role. Dominance is also psychological, emotional, relational, and that's why it's so important to separate play roles from power exchange roles. Just as not all bottoms are submissives, not all tops are dominants, and vice versa. Let me be clear. Bottoming is not lesser. Submission is not necessarily superior. There are different paths in the wide world of kink. Bottoms may crave physical stimulation and sensation play, but the thought of giving up control to another is not appealing to them at all. Submissives may crave control, structure, and surrender, but not wish to experience physical pain or restrictions. Some people are both. Others are strictly one or the other. There's a whole spectrum of colors of submission and bottoming, and there's no one right way to be or to fantasize or desire. The problem arises when someone claims to want to submit, but then they try to maintain control. And that brings us to the core of today's conversation. What is topping from the bottom? Now that we've defined topping as the act of delivering the action and bottoming as receiving it, we can talk about topping from the bottom. Topping from the bottom happens when the person in the receiving role, usually the bottom or submissive, tries to control the person in the delivering role while still presenting themselves as submissive. And I really want to emphasize that last part here. Topping from the bottom is not inherently wrong or bad, but the challenges and the distaste for it in the kink world for topping from the bottom stems from the person in the receiving role tries to control the person in the delivering role while still presenting themselves as a submissive. It's essentially attempting to direct the scene or lifestyle or to control the flow of play while still sitting in the supposedly obedient position. And here's the important part. Negotiating limits and desires, especially before a scene, is healthy. Using safe words during a scene is necessary. I want to really emphasize here that even if you are in a pre-negotiated scene and it gets too heavy for you to handle emotionally or physically, you can and should express this. And I want to thank FetLife user Little Care Bear for bringing this important issue to my attention. Expressing your limits, even during a scene, is not topping from the bottom. So don't feel bad about doing that if you're a submissive trying to avoid topping from the bottom. Expressing your limits is essential. It's communication, and it's essential for true BDSM to even exist. Now, if you find yourself in a pattern of negotiating scenes and then getting in too deep, you either need to work on your communication skills or confront the possibility that your dom is not the safest one for you. But giving constant unnegotiated instructions or steering the scene while it's in progress when that was not previously discussed undermines the agreed power dynamic. And that is topping from the bottom. Likewise, if you're in a femdom relationship and you want her to, for example, accept your sissy side and take control in the bedroom, and you want her to do specific things for you, that's topping from the bottom. It's okay to express your wants and desires, but if you are truly wanting a legitimate femdom, female-led relationship, it really is, yes, negotiated, but sitting and complaining about her when she exerts her power, that's topping from the bottom. So other examples of topping from the bottom are micromanaging mid-scene. Okay, now use the paddle harder, move a little to the left, or are we going to use the butt plug now? These are micromanaging a scene. Another is redirecting the top's choice. For example, no, not like that. Do it like Mistress Nash does, or you should make me face the mirror while we do this. That's redirecting the top's choices. It's micromanaging. Another is pushing for specific outcomes. For example, when are you going to let me come? Or even something like, you come for me now. The dominant saying that without that being part of the agreement beforehand, that's topping from the bottom. And then unagreed manipulation, bratting, guilt tripping, or fishing for reassurance to provoke a certain reaction. Like, oh, you're not going to ignore me, are you? Or dropping passive-aggressive hints like, oh no, if you keep doing that, you could edge me or make me have a forced orgasm. Honey, just your suggestion means that it will no longer be forced. So how do you avoid these things? Because it's okay to want as a submissive. And oftentimes the dominant is turned on by actualizing your fantasies. The key difference between healthy communication and topping from the bottom is intent and timing. And if you're still confused about the differences and whether or not you are or you are about to top from the bottom, here's a simple thing to remember. In healthy submissive play, you communicate to maintain safety and mutual enjoyment. In topping from the bottom, you communicate to keep control, which goes directly against the idea of surrender in a dom-sub dynamic. So why does this happen? Non-consensual topping from the bottom usually comes from one of three things. Number one is fear of giving up control or being truly vulnerable. This leads submissives to micromanage to protect themselves. Number two is mistrust in the dominant's ability to lead, either their skills or their actual dominance. And number three is misunderstanding about what submission really entails. And I think that this is really a very prevalent cause that we see in the community. The submissive has watched so much porn. They have this idea of what being a sub or a dom looks like, and they want reality to align with their fantasies. And when it feels different than they imagine it would, they try to take control to make it more like their fantasy. But this only puts them further away from that submission that they crave. A lot of self-identified submissives are deep down uncomfortable with surrender, and that's okay. It's a process, and it's not for everyone. But until you can truly let go, you may find yourself white-knuckling your role while your dominant struggles to lead. It becomes a power struggle. I presented this subject to the FetLife community to get others' opinions and insights into the problem of topping from the bottom. Again, I want to emphasize that topping from the bottom in itself is not a negative thing. And as my friend Mistress Lacey K divulged about her relationship, she said, I have my thoughts on this as my partner and I both exude topping from the bottom energy while in the bottom role. She said, my best way to avoid it is having a solid plan in our scene. If I know what I'm doing specifically, then I can shut down most requests. But if I'm just winging it or more casually playing, topping from the bottom helps give him what he's longing for and allows me to go with the flow and be less rigid. Long-term relationships provide space for both types of scenes and more. And then she goes on to say, It brings me much joy to hear him ask for what he wants, especially during non-structured scenes. His ideas have brought so much delight. We laugh a lot. So in the case of their relationship, when she has an intricately planned scene, there's no room for topping from the bottom, and she quickly shuts it down. However, when they're having unstructured play, she's open to his creative ideas. This is a relationship dynamic that is long-term, it's mentally, emotionally, and physically connected, and it thrives on consistent communication. So in this case, topping from the bottom when the timing is right is something that enhances and enriches their femdom relationship. So I maintain that topping from the bottom is not deserving of the bad rap that it so often gets. However, if you want to actually submit, not just bottom, here are some ways to avoid topping from the bottom. When you are communicating, it is all about how you present ideas and how you talk to the dominant that matters the most. The way you say things can completely change the tone of the relationship and how your words are received. FetLife user A Desire to Submit had an extensive list of what they do to mitigate the disrespectful feelings of topping from the bottom in a femdom dynamic. And I'm just going to quote them. I try to make it clear that I am only interested in things they enjoy. To set the tone, I often explicitly note that I have no expectations for clothing, so please wear whatever you're comfortable wearing, whether that's sweatpants or gear. I feel like this helps make it clear that I'm interested in making sure that she enjoys things. Also, explicitly noting that what I am interested in is the act of submission rather than chasing any specific fetish. For example, please only do things that you enjoy. For example, imagine if I were a new personal slave of yours. They also provide a list of things that they've done in the past or a broad list of interests, but they try to make it clear that they don't expect any of them. And if there's something that they explicitly to want to try, they'll mention it as something they are curious about but can live without. In person, it's also about giving the same level of commitment and response to her, whether it's something they enjoy or not. They also try to be honest and open when speaking at the end. I didn't enjoy the feeling of X, but I really loved seeing how much you enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite moments. End quote. Again, the tone, time, place, and delivery of all these things play an integral role in how well they're received with the femdom. Because even saying things like, please feel free to wear whatever you're comfortable in, could be taken as a command in the wrong context or timing. Some doms may think, of course I'm going to wear whatever the fuck I want. How dare you even bring it up, peasant? Others will find freedom to not have to perform in a statement that, at its core, was just a submissive expressing that he was really in it to serve purely and authenticity was key. If you're interested in someone and your first email communication is a list of things you have done and interests you would like to try, you're likely not going to get what you want out of that relationship. It needs to be a conversation. So negotiate before the scene, not during. Share your desires, limits, and fears in advance. And again, be careful sharing the desires and ensure that it's not like a laundry list of things that you want to do. Once the scene begins, step into surrender. And as FetLife username A Desire to Submit brought up, giving a laundry list of limits to implicitly restrict the dom into doing something the sub wants is also topping from the bottom. A perfect example would be if I say that I can't do pain, degradation, or humiliation except spitting on me and name-calling, then I'm using my limits to make the top spit on me and call me names. You're coercing the scene. And FetLife user Phantasm Orgasm reflected this in her insight. She said, something I look for as an indicator of someone who will absolutely top from the bottom is one who only talks about what they would like done to them or their own fantasies without ever asking what would please me as a dom. It is clear that they are a bottom and not a true submissive because they want you to serve them their fantasies on a silver platter without regard for what you desire. And there are plenty of tops for that. I want to thank all these users for their feedback and their insight on FetLife. Also, it's okay to use your safe words, but not your suggestions. If something's wrong, speak up. But do it through your agreed upon safety tools. Don't try to guide the scene mid-flow. Also, let go of outcome attachment. Submission is not a vending machine where obedience equals reward. Let your dominant lead in a way that suits them. Trust their vision. Number 4, reaffirm your desire to serve. Remind yourself, I choose to surrender, not because you're weak, but because you are strong enough to do so. And number 5, talk about it afterwards. Use aftercare and post-scene communication to share what worked, what didn't, and where you felt tempted to take the reins. Again, make sure that the timing is right with this feedback, as dominance can also feel very emotional and raw after a scene. They have feelings and sensitivities too, so be discerning about when and how you bring these things up. Bottoming is beautiful. Submission is power, and neither is more real than the other. But if you long for a femdom-led life or crave to be seen as a true submissive, you must do the internal work to give up control, not just the illusion of it. And that means thou shalt not non-consensually top from the bottom. Submission isn't about what's done to you. It's about what you offer. Thank you for tuning into the Dungeon. If this episode sparked something in you, if you're realizing you're ready to surrender more deeply, or maybe you've caught yourself topping from the bottom and want to shift, know this. There is no shame in the learning curve. You're learning, you're growing, it's okay. Submission is a practice, and you're not meant to be perfect, just honest, consistently honest. If you loved today's episode, leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want to go deeper into real lifestyle submission, you know where to find me. My website is www.KatNash.com. You can find me on FetLife, KatNash, and there are links below. Stay tuned for my exciting new 28-day DOMmed experience that is coming up. And until next time, stay kinky, my pets.